You're listening to From the Chair, and I'm your host, Mike Hamilton. Join us each episode as we talk to athletic directors from across America. We're going to talk about topics like leadership, career development, issues of the day, and I can promise you we're going to have some fun along the way too. So sit back, listen in, and let's dive in. Let's go. All right, welcome into today's episode. This is a special one for me because it's a dear friend. I say that about a lot of folks, good friends, but Mitch is a dear friend. And so Mitch Barnhart, University of Kentucky Athletic Director. Mitch, thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks, Mike. And always great to see you, number one, and good to spend some time with you. Appreciate all you're doing.
You know, I was thinking about, as preparing for this over the last 24 hours, you know, back in the day, for those who don't know, Mitch actually hired me in 1992 at the University of Tennessee, which I'm forever grateful for. But we were roommates on the road and spent a lot of nights on the I-40, you know, back and forth to Nashville, Memphis, and other places trying to raise a little money. And so it's been a friendship that I've cherished, and I'm so glad we can catch up. You know, I hope we'll get to continue to catch up more frequently offline, obviously, but glad we can spend a few minutes here today as well. So, you know, we did a podcast, Mitch, about 5 or 6 years ago, and I'm actually going to kind of go a different route a little bit here. I'm going to talk more specific to some of, I'll call it your leadership style and the things that have been important to you at the University of Kentucky. We talked actually more personal on the last podcast a number of years ago. Folks can go back and see that in the archives. But I think given your tenure in college athletics, and you know, if you look at your bio, you've won pretty much every award there is. The Toner Award, you're in the Kentucky Hall of Fame, you've won the SBJ National Award, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that you have had good people around you and you've been at a good place, but you have also served this industry really, really well for a long time. And so I want to come off the top. You actually operated on 5 guiding principles at the University of Kentucky. You know, they're unique to Kentucky, and you guys, I don't know how long you've had those particular principles in place, but they're pretty clear cut. And I know that's how you do your business. You point back to that whenever you're making decisions, and maybe just share with our audience a little bit about how you think about the business at Kentucky.
Yeah, I think, you know, as I look back, and you referred to our time at Tennessee, we both worked for a gentleman by the name of Doug Dickey, and I'll never forget walking into the office one day, and I said, "Hey, Coach, there are these things called like core values and principles, mission statements that companies are coming up with." And I thought maybe I wrote down some things that I thought you might want to talk about. He looked at me really clearly. He says, "Mitch, I'll tell you the 2 principles. We win, we get to keep our jobs. We lose, we get fired." And I said, "Yeah, those are 2 good principles." But he was great, and we sat down and we talked. And he said, "I tell you," he says, "you know, the times are changing." And he says, "You will need those one day." And he says, "Use them for when you go to lead your own department." And so I did. I wrote them down, and they were the 5 things I wrote down in 1996. I dated the piece of paper, 1996. And I've said this many times. I said, there's the old saying that methods are many and principles are few. Your methods will always change. Your principles never do. And so our principles have stayed the same. And clearly, over the last course of 26 years in college athletics, there is no doubt that the methods continue to change and continue to challenge leaders and coaches and folks in positions of decision making. And for us, that's absolute truth. Other side of that is our principles have stayed the same. And the 5 principles are really quickly this. Number 1, we have to have character of the heart. I want people to have right hearts for what we're doing, and that they're in it for the right reasons, and they're in it for the 2 principles that are part of this thing is education and competition, learning how to do those 2 things incredibly well. So that's number 1. Number 2, we have to have great integrity. And those are 2 way different things. Integrity, I feel like, is sort of from the brain, and it sort of says, hey, these are the things, the rules of the road, the boundaries with which you must operate. So you must function within those. And the concept of the heart and the brain working together to create the person, the people that we want to be, is really important to me. And then the third thing, we've got to be knowledgeable. And whether that's our staff or our coaches or our student athletes, we've got to be knowledgeable. It means we're educated in what we're doing. And that can be an education that we're achieving in the classroom. It can be an education that we get from working with others in our positions of coaching or being administrators. And so to be on the cutting edge of those pieces is really important. Fourthly, we got to be good stewards of what we've been given. We're all given a variety of things, 2 things most notably, talent and time. And if we're not giving of those 2 things, they get taken away from you. You must be sacrificial in that. And there's many people have talked about sacrificial leadership and servant leadership. And truly, I believe that if you're not willing to give it away, you can't be a great leader and you can't lead other people. They won't buy into that if you're holding on to it. And then the fourth thing, or the last thing of the five, is just have to have a competitive heart. And it doesn't mean that we win everything we want to win, and we'd all be undefeated, right? And that's not going to work out. But I want to have competitive hearts for the enterprise that we're in, for the journeys that we're going to be on, and for the way we conduct ourselves. And along the way, I think that we're supposed to conduct ourselves a certain way in that spirit of competition and honorably, with sportsmanship, with class and dignity. That's the way the games were all created, and we tend to sometimes get away from that. So the way we manage gamesmanship versus sportsmanship and honor versus just walking away from a competition and saying I'm going to get there whatever way necessary. And so that's been important, the way we've conducted our business, and hopefully it will continue to be a benchmark or a foundation for the way we conduct our business at Kentucky.
At the end of the day, you may say the answer to this next question I'm going to give you is sustainable culture, but I'm curious, you've been fortunate to have staff members who've been with you for a long time across many, different sports coaches and staff and so forth. But inevitably, as you've said, this is a business that's evolving and changing. And how do you, as a leader, and your team, your leadership team as leaders, make sure that these principles, these guiding principles, are articulated in the daily walk with your staff, particularly for new folks who are coming on board? I guess it's probably, it's action over words and it's the culture, but I'm curious, any practical tips that you guys go about to make sure that others know what you stand for there?
Well, there's never a day that we don't go into some meeting, some conversation, and we don't articulate the five. They're number one. They're put everywhere. We are in locker rooms. They're put on all of our team documentations that we would give teams at the beginning of the year. We talk about in our team meetings, both beginning of the year and end of the year. We talk about in recruiting visits. Talk about when we're hiring people. We let them know these are the things that you'll be. If you can hold these things in the right fashion, that's all you'll need. That's all you'll need. And so we talk about it a lot. And I would say most of our staff can get 4 of the 5. They'll forget one along the way somewhere, like they do. But and our young people will get most of them. But more importantly, I think that you can talk about it, but if your actions don't back it up, they're not going to believe that your principles are what you say you are. So it's not your intentions that get people to follow you. It is your actions. And I'm not trying to win friendships in this thing. I want their respect. I want people to respect the way we conduct our business and the way we do our work. And again, we don't function in perfection, and I want people to be abundantly clear in that. We're not perfect in what we do, but we will be great triers, and we'll work at it, and we'll continue to pound it home all the time. We talk about it. We have an all-staff meeting. We do once a month. We've got a committee in our department that works really hard at putting together all staff get-togethers, and we have everybody come and have breakfast together, and we sing the fight song and do those kind of things. But embedded in all of those every time is our 5 principles. And so I just think that it's just a continuing to do that, just to keep pounding at it. That we've been at it 21 years here, and I think what would have happened if people were if we kept changing them every 2 to 3 years. Hey, here's the new set of principles, and 5 years later, hey, here's a new set of principles, and we've just stayed steady. Methods change, principles don't.
Yeah. So your outcomes from that, and we're talking about academically, the kinds of people that are produced in your program, the kind of folks who are leading out your program, successes in the community, and certainly athletically. One of the things I wanted to highlight, I think that you've done a masterful job with creating a department that has cross-sport success. I mean, you can look to almost every sport that you field at University of Kentucky and highlight SEC and national success in those sports. And this past year, you had your highest finish in the history of the university in the Learfield Directors Cup, finishing 9th. I know you've now had a couple of top 10 finishes, and over the last number of years now, you've been in the top 15, top 20. I know how important it is to you that all student athletes have the success and support to do that. But maybe let's talk specifically about how you're trying to provide the resources for your student athletes, regardless of whether or not you're a women's golfer, you're a softball player, you're a basketball player, to make sure that they have the most elite experience possible?
Well, there's my colleague and dear friend Rob Mullins, who's at the University of Oregon, would work for me my early years at Kentucky, and he coined a phrase, and we've all where he I'll give him credit for developing it. He may not have, but we're going to give him credit. I think he did. We're going to say he did. He had a phrase: "Have resources meet expectations." And when I came here, our expectations from our media and our fans and everyone was at a level that we just had no resources even come close to be able to match in those. The flip of that is also a problem. You have these incredible resources and you underutilize those resources and you don't match them with expectations, with big, hairy, audacious goals or whatever you want to call it. What we've tried to do is match resources to expectations to give us a chance to compete in the most difficult league in America, in my opinion. And sport to sport, it is incredibly difficult to compete in this conference. When we came in, we were dead last in a lot of areas in the SEC. And so to be able to gently resource those teams, saying, what do you need to be successful? We're the northernmost school in the southernmost conference. We are in a state that is economically challenged at times. We're really challenged economically. We only have one Fortune 500 company in the entire state of Kentucky. So, and they're really not affiliated with us in any way, shape, or form. So we're really challenged in an area that relies on coal and agriculture to try and find a way financially to be able to produce enough resources for our program. So being a member of the Southeastern Conference and the resources that we get from there and being really smart about what we do and saying to our coaches, what's necessary for us to create that mentality that we are able to compete in this league. And our folks have been really thoughtful about where they've placed resources. The first place for us, candidly, was people. We were short people, and we had to have the numbers of the people and then the right people in as somebody that understood our culture at Kentucky, and then had an opportunity to just recruit the right student athletes to our program and give us a chance to build that foundation over the years. And so that's been really important to us. And then I think just great consistency. Keeping people at Kentucky has been important to us. I think sometimes coaches, staff members change rapidly, and all of a sudden you find yourself in this gerbil wheel of trying to keep people in your program and continue to. Well, we've been able to keep. We've got 17 head coaches. 11 of them have been with us longer than 10 years. And that's important for us to build that consistency and that mentality to say, we know how this place needs to operate and wants to operate, and we'll do that. And we're going to be really good stewards of those resources. And so our fans have been very thoughtful. We've got two programs that are more different than anybody else, basketball and football, and they feed the 23 and give us a chance to be successful in our sports programs. And so, and then we, obviously we do the little things with teams and try and celebrate successes and our end of the year awards and just special times with our student athletes, make people feel special and honored for what they've given and what they've done.
How many student athletes do you have now, Mitch?
Right at 600. Right at 600.
Yeah, so I know one of your things you always try to do is learn a little something about every student athlete, to know their name, be able to talk to them as they come by. That's impressive. I try to do as much of that as I could as well. It's those are a lot of names, particularly with the transition and kids from year to year now with the transfer portal. But I know how important student athletes are to you.
Yes.
If you sit any time at all with you in any kind of conversation, you're going to hear you talk about student athletes pretty quickly and pretty often. So that's something you've made a highlight of your career as athletic director, and maybe just share a little bit about the genesis of that, and we could probably extrapolate why you think that's important, but I'd like to hear from your mouth.
Well, I think we do a lot of the team meals and things like that at our house. COVID really threw us a curveball when that happened, and to be bluntly honest with you, my wife and I were transitioning into a different home. We sold our home in the city, so to speak, and moved to the country, and we're in the process of putting something together on the farm. And between COVID and that, we went through about a 3-year stretch where we didn't get to spend much time with our teams, either by the pandemic or the transition. And so getting back to that is critically important to us. We love doing that. We love having young people in our home. For some, I'm sure they're going, oh, we got to go to the athletic director's home. That's no fun. But we try and create and make it enjoyable, make it different than what they would normally see, and they see us in a different role. And I think that's so important. They see you as an athletic director in this supervisory role that you just show up and you're counting the dollars and you're making sure that people are, and they got to see it do something different. That I do have a wonderful wife and Connie, and we've got children and grandchildren. There's pictures on the wall. We actually have a life outside of college athletics, and we're different. And so we want them to see that and to feel that and to understand that we do care at a different level. And we have some things that we can share and hopefully give life experiences that are valuable to them. And that's important. And then we do some other things in terms of leadership development. And this is the Kentucky, what we call it, the Kentucky Road. And you get on the Kentucky Road. Now you've heard the old song, My Old Kentucky Home. Well, we create, when you come into your new Kentucky home, and we help you transition into that. And then you're on the road. And then at the very end, it's now my old Kentucky home, and you're an alum, and you get to share that with your children and your children's children generationally. But our goal out of the whole thing, Mike, is to create generational leadership. And I think there's a lot of things to get talked about. You hear a lot about generational wealth and everything like that. I think that the thing I want to do as we leave here is we're creating generations of leaders, and that the young people leaving our program are going to be really, really good leaders of whatever, of companies, of teams, of families, of organizations that help people and do good things and do good work. And if we do that, we've been ultra successful. I mean, we'll find our wins. I always tell people, if we keep our principles in the order from character to competitive hearts, if we keep them in the right order, we're going to win enough games. We don't have to worry about defining what the score is at the end. But if we worry about that end result first, and then winning becomes the penultimate deal, the most important thing that we do, we're going to lose. And we'll lose frequently, and we'll be grounded in the wrong things. So our goal is to create generational leaders. And what encourages me more than anything else is the young people that are coming back to our program and say, hey, Mr. Barnhart, do you remember when I was there? And remember when I did this and this and this? And hey, now I've got a family and I've got 2 kids and I'm running this company, or I'm doing this. Or you're going, wow, 2 things. I'm really old. And number 2, this is really cool. There's people doing really good things, but thanks. But the worst part, Mike, is I'm starting to recruit the children of the people that I first played for when I first came to Kentucky. That's scary. That is really scary.
That's funny, because that's actually a question I was going to ask you. Now that you've been in Kentucky 21 years, are you starting to see the second generation? So that's tremendous.
I am. Yeah, I am. It's really cool. Now I'll go back in time. We did our version of the ESPYs when I first came here. It's called the Catspies. And I did the old Sports Center ad when I was in the trunk of the car, and the guy comes opens the trunk of the car, and the guy pops. I was in the trunk of the car, and I popped out and everything like that. And the guy that was driving the car was a guy named Antonio Hall, and he was an offensive lineman for us. We have now got his son on our football team. And I said, Antonio, remember we did that ad together? He goes, that was the funniest thing ever. And so we were laughing. But,
that's wild.
Good times and a lot of fun. And but that just tells you, you stay the course, and you see good things happen, and people come back around, and it's really good to foster those relationships.
So you mentioned Rob a minute ago. I've got to go there for just a minute. You can point to 5 or 6 athletic directors that have had a number of current athletic directors who have worked with and for them. Mike Alden, Joe Castiglione, some others. Certainly, you are one of those in particular. When you think about the Power 5 presence of those who've been on your team at Kentucky, you've got Rob at Oregon, you've got Greg Byrne at Alabama, John Cohen at Auburn, Scott Strickland at Florida, Dwayne Peamies at DePaul, Kevin Sauls at Wichita State. I probably missed somebody along the way there, maybe. But I was at Tennessee at one point, so I don't know if I don't count on your Kentucky team, but I certainly was. Yeah. But certainly was one of the guys that worked with you, and give credit to you. So every one of those guys are different. They're all different. And candidly, when they were at Kentucky, Mark Coyle is the other one at Minnesota. So they all handle different parts of business for you at Kentucky. What's the common theme?
I think it goes back to really, really quality people. I mean, their hearts are in the right spot, every one of them, and they care about people the right way, and because of that, they can begin to make decisions for their departments and for their careers and their families, all those things. They're just grounded. They're really, really solid people. And if you said, if I got in trouble, I could call some folks and say I need some advice. I I could put any one of those folks on speed dial, and I'd feel very comfortable with that. And so, just really high quality people that care deeply about the enterprise of college athletics, and are really, really they're well thought through, smart, um, and again, somebody I could pick up the phone. They're great friends. We compete. Heck, there's like four of them in my league, or three or four of them in my league. I'm competing against every day, and my word, if I'd have known that, I wouldn't have given them the opportunity at Kentucky. Then I knew that. Just joking. I was glad to do it, but we have a saying around here that we want to equip people to launch people, and it isn't about holding on tight. If you hold tight to things, you lose them. They tend to find their way out of your hands. If you open your hand up and you release people to do what they do best, and you release them to pursue their dreams, and usually it works out okay. They'll do really cool things for you, and then they get to go do really cool things for them. So they've always had, when they were at Kentucky, they had a heart for Kentucky, and they worked really hard for our program. We wanted to give them as many chances, and so what we do is we give broad-based opportunity for them to learn things in different venues and different places, include them in different places. And we do leadership things where we try and grow people up out of our department. Say, if you want to do the next thing, you want to be a head coach, you want to be a senior associate athletic director, eventually an AD. These are those steps you take to go to get there, and we try and coach people through those. And I know everyone else does those things as well, but that's something we think is important to our folks. Then we release them. How do we help you get ready? How do we help you prepare for the interview? How do we connect you up? And we take great pride in our folks populating different places across the landscape of college sports, and then we get to show up and compete against each other. And I genuinely say this: we hug each other at the end of the day, and it's someone's disappointed and someone feels good about what they've done, but at the end of the day, that friendship means more to me than that win or that loss on the field.
It's a good group of folks, to be certain. So I mentioned a minute ago your time at Kentucky since 2002. It should be noted you're also served as athletic director at Oregon State for 5 or 6 years prior to that. Worked at Tennessee and SMU and Oregon and at San Diego State. Look, you've got the benefit now of kind of looking back, and this is a chance to speak to those who are coming behind you. And you and I have had conversations many times about, wanting to make sure that those who are this next generation of leaders understand the goodness and the hardness of college athletics, and also are principled in how they approach it. And certainly you have really been good about following your core values and your principles, but I also know you have evolved as a leader along the way as an athletic director over the last, now, gosh, while. And I'm curious as to, what you would say to this next group of leaders that are going to start obtaining these athletic director chairs in the next 5 to 10 years that you've learned in your 25 plus years now as an athletic director that you can leave with them.
I think we're in such a changing landscape that that's not news to anybody. I mean, I'm always fascinated, and I don't want to be that guy that takes the microphone and say, "Hey, well, the world's changing." Well, that's not rocket science. We've all figured that out by now. It's going really quickly, and it's. I think there's a couple things. There's 2 or 3 things as I look at leaders going forward. I'll go back to an interview I heard Jordan Spieth do. He's obviously the golfer. He was going through a really difficult time, and he finally broke through after going through a little bit of a slump, after a 3 or 4 year slump, and he broke through and won a tournament. And they asked him afterwards in his drought. He said, how'd you get through your drought? And he said, I needed to stay consistent in what I was doing in my preparation, and not quit. I needed to be vigilant, be resolute, just be consistent. Then he said, I need to stay around it. I needed to be around it a lot. And I think a lot of times what we tend to do when we get uncomfortable with something, we tend to try and distance ourselves from it and stay away from it. And it doesn't mean that we have to agree with everything. It just means we have to be around it a little bit and pay attention to it and make sure that we're thoughtful about it. Be informed. And that was the other thing he said. And then he said, I just need to be resolute and keep trying. And that's what I think is important. The component in all of this is that as I see young people coming up, And that includes my children, my children's children, and everyone else. Um, Young people in our department, young coaches, all think everyone wants rights to talk about what is my right, what am I getting paid, what's my title going to be, what am I that's all fine. There is a set of responsibilities that go with that. And you got to marry those two things up and find balance in all of that. With rights come responsibilities. With things we all want to attain come a responsibility. And so it's really, really important that I think that we keep those two things consistent. And then we find balance in how we do our work. I think sometimes what ends up happening is we get so in polar positions. I'm not talking about politics or anything, just polar positions. Anything we do in our job, we say, I'm just not doing that. I'm just not doing that. I'm not comfortable with that, or it's something I don't know. Okay, well then it's time to step back, go find the middle ground, and find some balance in what you're doing. Get some knowledge, be consistent, be around it, be an encourager, and be positive. What's so difficult now is everything has become so negative, and I'm going to say something publicly, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows that I'm in this really unmovable position where at the end of the day, there's usually room to work with people through things. And so that's a little bit of my encouragement is try and find a way to work with people, be encouraging. Um, Remember the responsibilities that go with all the rights that we're challenged and we're challenging people for. Be consistent in the way you approach this emotional roller coaster that we tend to want to get on is really difficult. Be informed and again, be resolute in wanting to find the greater good. And I think that's so important is put the emotions aside and try and find the greater good. And I wasn't always good at that. In my younger career, I could get a little feisty with folks, and I might get them frustrated with an official or two. I don't remember doing that very well, but there's others that told me I did. I don't remember that.
I'm a witness. I'm a witness. uh, all right, so just a couple more here. This was a little bit. I'm kind of come at you from a little bit different angle. This wasn't on the list of things I wanted to talk to you about, but as I'm just sitting here talking to you, you had the benefit of serving on two of the most prestigious committees in college athletics, being a part of the CFP selection committee, and then obviously chairing the NCAA basketball committee. And these are two different questions relative to those two experiences. One, just your general thoughts about the expansion of the CFP, and then the second one, I've always wondered. Um, Obviously, I was in Indianapolis that spring when all the teams were in Indy for the tournament. And granted, it would be really hard to do this based upon you can only do it a couple places in America, particularly if fans were able to attend in full attendance versus what there. But the electricity in the city of Indianapolis around all the teams being in one location in multiple venues within an hour and a half radius, up at Purdue and Indiana and Fieldhouse, Hinkle Fieldhouse, et cetera, et cetera. I'm curious, is that ever a thing that you think could happen? Because it's probably maybe L.A., Las Vegas, Indy. They're just a really small handful of towns that could even host that. Don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's so the CFP expansion, yeah, super important part of time for college football, and that will certainly be an opportunity for more folks to be involved. The 12 teams, and obviously we at Kentucky, that sort of gives us a chance as we look at it from our lens. We're saying maybe that gets us a chance to be included, and so that would be something that would be very exciting for us. But something on the backside of that that's critically important, I think, also is the ability to keep bowl games around, because that's where we built our program. We built our program through bowl games, and we provided an opportunity for young people to play in postseason play. If you're not good enough to be in the 12, which let's face it, there's only going to be a few of those, and so you certainly want an opportunity for your team to be able to compete in postseason play and have that opportunity to build your program. That's how we did it. We've been to 7 straight bowl games in a row, and we had won 4 in a row, and until this year, and that allowed us to get to a 10-win season a couple different times. And Coach Dukes has done a great job, and that's been important for us. So I think the CFP expansion is good for the game of college football and includes more folks, but I also want to be mindful of what we're asking our players and our student athletes to do, and I think we are. I think everybody's being thoughtful about that. I also want to make sure we don't lose sight of the bowl games and how important those are for the game of college football. We've sort of owned the month of December, and that's so special when you sit there and you go home on a Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening, and hey, what games are on tonight? And there's 2 or 3 bowl games on tonight, and you get to find somebody to watch. And I just think it's really so special for college football. It's a great time of year. It's part of the holiday tradition, and I don't want to see us lose that. So that's number one. Number two, the question about the basketball tournament. Wow, what a unique tournament that was. And there was a staff of people that did remarkable work at the men's basketball committee. Dan Gavitt, led by Dan Gavitt, and that his team, unbelievable professionals. To have the ability, tenacity, and knowledge to pull off in such short period of time that basketball tournament was so uniquely special. It'll be something in terms of things I've done in my career I will never forget, and I never. Um, yeah, I'm not sure that there was something that I appreciated more than the ability to be a part of that team and the work that they did and the committee that I had the opportunity to work with. And we were holed up in the hotel in Indy for a month together and getting tested every morning and working your way through the convention center and the venues and all the protocols and stuff. And so to the teams that went through it, thank you so much for just enduring that. But also it showed the discipline of student athletes and coaches and administrations to get through that. But to Dan Gavin and his team, unbelievable. And can you pull that off? Oh, I think you could pull it off. Absolutely. Could, where would you do it? Who knows? And do you want to do it? Because it is such a beautiful national tournament and it's shared by so many people in so many venues. So there's pluses and minuses to all of it. Having everybody there, the excitement in one city was certainly, it was electric. But having said that, there's also a reason to make sure that everyone shares in the beauty of college basketball and the tournament. So I think a lot of conversation. Maybe once in a while, maybe it might be fun to try. But I will tell you, it takes an enormous workload. And to Dan and his staff and the people that I had, again, so blessed to work with during that tournament, that's a great memory for me personally in terms of things that I had a chance to be a part of in my career.
Well, so we'll look forward to the chapter on that in the book, right?
Yeah, there's some chapters that need to be written for sure.
Mitch, I knew this would go fast, man. I can't tell how much I appreciate it. I guess we'll have to do a Mitch Barnhart Volume 3 at some point. And
scary. That is scary.
Yeah. But thanks for taking a little bit of time today.
No, my pleasure, Mike. Always good to see you, and appreciate your friendship and all you do, and just trying to find a way to challenge and build good leaders. And so thanks for doing that, and we'll look forward to seeing you and Beth and down the road and on our many trips to Nashville. So
same. All right, folks, you've been listening to one of the great ones, Director of Athletics, University of Kentucky, Mitch Barnhart. Hope you'll listen here and every week as we distribute both on audio and video platforms for your podcast. And we'll see you next time.